All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is Jay again, and it is middle of July, late July here in Phoenix, Arizona. We are past the worst month of the year, which happens to be June. And in fact, if you can really get your plants past June, you're pretty good to go, because if you can get them through to July, that is when the magic starts happening again, and that's when a lot of things start growing and flowering once again, and you'll get a lot of actual new growth in July and August, as long as you keep the water up on the plants, obviously, right? Because there's just a little bit more humidity in the air, and that's really all it takes here in Arizona, is maybe 5% more humidity, and your plants will start to look great. They will start to green back up again here soon, and nice dark green new growth. You can see it here on these citrus. They're just growing right out here in the full sun, and everything is starting to look good again. Once again, everything is starting to turn from that sort of Arizona green or Arizona yellow, and it's starting to shift back towards some of the darker colors as we start to cool off here in the valley. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about a tree that I have done videos on before, but it happens to look best during two particular times of the year, and that is going to be right about now, July, and right about December, in the middle of winter. And that tree is going to be the rainbow eucalyptus, which happens to be, as you can see here, the tallest tree on my property. Although that mulberry is getting pretty close. Close second anyway, and so is that mulberry. That one right there is catching up as well. But the tallest tree back here, and I want to say he's right around 50 foot tall, is going to be the rainbow eucalyptus. And like I said, this time of the year is when they are looking really, really good as far as new growth and blooms and their bark, because their bark gets some of the best color shifting over the summer months of July. Okay, so here is the rainbow eucalyptus. And man, it is a beautiful tree. I will admit that this is probably one of the prettiest trees that I have here on the property. We're starting to get some pinks and purples here at the back of the tree, and some nice fire oranges, and some reds, some purples. But yeah, this is a big tree, as you can see here. Let's go on up. And barely see the top of it up there. And this tree is also very large, so not only is it a tall tree, providing a lot of shade here at the nursery, but it is also has a really large span. So it's also shading a very large width, which is nice because it keeps this building here completely shaded in the afternoon. Okay, so I love this tree. I will admit it is a little bit messy as far as leaves and sticks and stems and flowers, but I would not trade this tree for the world, because it is not only one of the most beautiful trees, but it's also one of the rarest trees in the world. And you always see these in those videos where it talks about some of the more rare trees. And really, this video really doesn't do it justice. Like, this thing's enormous. If you could be under it right now and see the scale of this tree. And right now it's in full bloom. So if you can see the flowers here, they get completely covered in white flowers, and then the bees will come and pollinate the flowers. All right, I had to get a ladder to get up here to the actual blossoms, so you can see that it's got these little white flowers, and the bees just get drunk out here on these flowers. I'm just going to sit here for a second just so you can see how many bees will visit just one flower here, and this thing is literally covered in these flowers. It looks like snow. And then what'll happen is it'll make these very, very tiny seeds, and I'm talking microscopic. Each little seed packet there from each flower contains like 100 little microscopic seeds. So it's very difficult actually to get this plant started. And it's really funny too, because it's one of the biggest trees that I have here on the property, and it also has one of the smallest seeds of any of the seeds that I've seen here on the property. And it's not invasive, meaning these seeds don't fall and just sprout all over the place, because our soil is very dry here. And it doesn't stay wet long enough to germinate these seeds, because these seeds have to be germinated on top of the soil. You don't want to bury them, they're too small actually. So you have to sow these on top of the soil, and it's very difficult to get these started. And it's really difficult to get them through the first year. Once you get them through the first year, they are typically okay. There's one that I have in a pot growing right down below me here. I'm on the ladder. Let me go down here. And they grow very, very, very fast once they hit a certain size. So I'm 6 foot, he's just a little bit taller than me. And you can see that I've got a rainbow eucalyptus started here. This is a seed. I've got another one back here. This one is also a seed. And they're from this tree, so I know exactly what they are. And to tell you a little bit more about the tree, it's called a rainbow eucalyptus because of the bark and because of those colors. And it goes through different color shifts all year long. So this tree never really looks the same any day of the year, because the bark peels off. As you can see, it's peeling up here, and it shows a new color underneath. And then as that piece of bark ages there, it becomes a different color throughout time, and then eventually it peels off and it starts back over again. So it's an ever-changing rainbow eucalyptus, let's call it, because it never has the same bark pattern at the same time of the year, and they really look good this time of the year. Now, this tree is very, very hardy, except when it's small. So to kind of get it going is a little bit of a challenge for people, because it grows so rapidly. You have to stake it up if you want to keep the central leader, and if you want to keep a single trunk tree like this one, it's very difficult to do that, because we have what's called monsoon winds here in Arizona, and it tends to snap these off. And once you snap them off, they don't really become a single leader again. It's very hard for them to do that. They start to bush out and sprout where that was snapped off at. And yes, you can train one to kind of go back up again, but it's really never the same. You want to try to keep and maintain that central leader until it gets great big, and then you'll have that nice big central trunk with all the nice color on it. Okay, so you're going to be staking this up for several years. It took me 3 or 4 years of staking to get the big one established, because it grew to that 50-foot mark first, and it was still very, very skinny. So we had to support that tree during the monsoon winds before it ever got a good foundation and bolted in. So it's a tricky tree, and it's a challenging tree, and it's no wonder you don't see a lot of these. And that's probably the biggest one in Arizona that I know of, is the one that I have here on the property. There may be another big one, or some getting closer now, because a lot of people have planted these since I planted this one. But I know that this is definitely one of the bigger ones, being about 50 foot tall and about 50 foot a wingspan on that tree. This tree is enormous. Like I said, it's very hard to see scale on these videos, right? So really the challenge is going to be keeping this thing alive through the first winter, because they tend to freeze when they're a little bit smaller. Once they're bigger though, they're going to look good during the winter. So remember, I said these look really good during those 2 time periods of the year, during winter and during summer, midsummer, right? That's when they're going to look the best. But that's an established tree, so this tree has to get established before it's going to look great during the winter. But the first few winters, it might not look that great. But then after that, it's going to look exactly like this in the middle of the winter, and it blooms again during the winter. So you'll see the same activity, the same bees, you know, the same colors, the new growth. And in fact, the new growth is really pretty on this tree because it starts out as sort of a reddish color and then it becomes a nice green. Okay, so yeah, a lot of people were interested in this rainbow eucalyptus because yes, it is beautiful and it is one of the more rare trees in the world. It's just, you got to remember, why are they a rare tree in the world, right? Because there's a lot of conditions that kind of stifle this tree before you can get it going. But if you can get it going, I mean, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to be one of your largest trees on your property, and definitely a showpiece, you know, something you could talk about. All right, guys, that is it on rainbow eucalyptus, or as much as I know about them. I know they grow a lot of these in San Diego, California. I know they grow them in Hawaii. I think they've actually maybe even got one of these over at Boyce Thompson Arboretum, which is not that far from me here. And yeah, like I said, once you get them established, they're just fine with that cold weather. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you liked this video. And I would say definitely try to get out and get you one of these trees. I grow a very limited supply of them because, like I said, these are seed grown, and I only grow a certain amount of certain trees per year because I've only got limited room to do that. So there's only going to be a certain amount of star fruits, you know, a certain amount of guavas, a certain amount of brown sugar fruits, but they're all going to look really good. They're all going to be very specimen quality because I keep the plants around here looking very, very good, especially during the summer months when everything starts to fall apart on you there. It's just a lot of good extra water, food, really knowing the plants and the environments that they need, right? Remember, an environment like this, most people think nothing will grow in here because it's too dark, but this is basically full sun for tropical trees, so they can exist in this environment just fine and grow nice fruit. Some nice guavas back here, right? So not everything needs the full blasting sun. And that actually brings me to another point real quick is, if you have one of these and it's the majority of that trunk is in the sun for the majority of the day, it's probably not going to look like this. It's probably not going to rainbow like this, right? Because this is skin that peels, right? This is not bark yet. But if this tree is in more sunlight to where the trunk is getting basically blasted and not being protected by its own foliage, or another tree in front of it, like you see I have a jacaranda here in front of this tree, actually just protecting its trunk more or less, right? Well, then they'll tend to bark up a little bit. So they'll tend to look a little bit more like this jacaranda. So you can see the bark on this tree, right? And so it's going to look a little bit more like this because it's trying to protect itself from the sun. So it might not necessarily look as good as this one here, where a lot of that trunk is in fact in the shade. You really have to protect plants, and you really have to be aware of where the sun is hitting certain plants at certain times of the day and certain times of the year, because the sun moves throughout the sky and it's going to expose different plants during the year that might not, you know, be in the sun. You know, like this mango. This mango is in the shade for most of the year, and then in the middle of the summer, it's in the sun, right? So the worst timing, basically, right, is having this mango here in the full sun in the middle of summer, right? But if you just keep everything nice and irrigated, obviously, water things, well, then they'll look great, even out here in the full sun after summer, right? Because at least the ground's covered. He does have some shade, a little bit of cover here and there. All right, guys, that is it for today. Thank you for watching. Rainbow eucalyptus, one of the favorite trees I have here on the property.